Okay, Sinatape. Woo-hoo! Welcome to Native Wellness Institute's Power Hour. And boy, we're just exciting times. Exciting times. In the background here, I am at the Eastern Shoshone Recovery Program that now goes by their Shoshone name. So welcome. Uh, Nistu Amskapi Pikani. Most of you know me as the Badass Auntie or as Theda Newbreast, but I'm from the Blackfeet Nation, and I come from the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is Siksikai, Kainai, Abatsa Pikani, and Amskapi Pikani. So welcome to Wellness Wednesday. So how are you guys? Often, I'll say, raise your hand if you had a Halloween outfit. Raise your hand if you hid out and you didn't give children nothing. I'm here co-facilitating Gona with Marcus Red Thunder. And he said he ran out of candy, so he just started giving out Indian names. So the kid that came to the door, he just gave him an Indian name. Hey, so there was so much humor, so much fun. And I'd like to speak some about our topic today is how do we bring humor and fun into healing? How do we laugh with something that's tragic? If you don't know me, that's okay. I don't need to know everybody. But it's just some protocol. My mother, who is still alive, Euskiptadaki, yellow flower woman, lives in Browning, Montana. And all of my cousins, I have 51st, 55, 54, I think 53 now, first cousins. I live with all of them and all of their families. And I say that because I was born in 1956. Wow, still alive. Wow, still healthy. Wow. And I was born where I didn't know what a nuclear family was. Not nuclear like a bomb, nuclear. I didn't know where there was just a mom and a dad and some kids. And then grandma and grandpa came over on the holidays. I didn't know what that was. I guess because I'm an Indian. You know how like they say, oh, I can't understand. Why do you got 8 people riding in your car? Because I'm Indian. How come you got 25 people living in your house? Because I'm Indian. How come you like to eat red wieners? Because I'm Indian. How come you like fry bread? Because I'm Indian. There's all these things. And now that we have a lot of humor around who's Indian and who's not Indian, who wants to be Indian. We used to have some old jokes in the 60s would look at someone and they were taking over Alcatraz. And if they were very light complected, they'd say, who's that? And they'll say, well, I think they're Indian. And then they say, by natural injection or by blood? You got it. By natural injection or by blood? Anyway, who is Indian? It's Tabatapi, Gakimoket, Nagaspomokit, Creator, pity me, help me. That's a topic forever and ever. But let's start with why we're here in Wind River Reservation and what's going on here. And then I still feel so elated. So what was going on yesterday during Halloween is it was the first day of our gathering of Native Americans on the Wind River Reservation. And today is day 2. And everybody's over there. They made homemade chili, homemade cornbread with butter and someone made proportion, just about smaller than this, proportion size fry bread. And we're just like feasting because we had a teaching from his elder Curtis. And goes around with his rocker, but he's vibrant, and he gave us a teaching on Shoshone creation story. And then he gave us a teaching on a lot of protocols about learning and asking Creator Ishtabatapi about how you learn to sing songs in Shoshone and how. Thank you, Sadie. Thank you. We were just Sadie Posey, my niece, and she just got into graduate school in chemistry. I just like badass auntie. I got all these nieces and nephews, and they're just extremely epic, intelligent. They're getting these. She's got into graduate school, and she has the most. Her destiny. She took chemistry at Bozeman and aced it and passed and got her degree. But what she wanted to become was a chemist that makes beautiful lipstick. Her and I, the only makeup I wear is lipstick. And so Sadie started with there's high class lipstick, and then there's medium class lipstick, and then there's just lipstick of whatever, just like grab some lipstick and put it on. But she wanted to learn through chemistry what is the proper ingredients for people with this color skin, and for this color hair. Some of it's, touched up a little bit, But even, I was just thinking even our greasy, kind of greasy is okay. But even foundation, and if you do your eyebrows, and if you do your eyelashes, and you go in and get a tuck, all those kind of things. You only post pictures with filters? Is that fake ass if you only post pictures with filters? And that's Auntie go, how come that person, when I met them, they didn't look like that? What happens to us when we want to fake how we look? Wow, what a question. So what are we doing here? The second day, so yesterday, I want to just share with you, we decided to have the first day of belonging, which is about creation story. It's about genealogy. It's about rites of passage. It's about playing unity games of belonging, about bringing people together. But half the people, half our group, Sadie was dressed like Elvis. We had one of the lawyers, one of the top-notch lawyers here. She had orange hair and blinking lights, and it was beautiful. And then we had some people who kept on their mask, and we couldn't see who they were, unless. And how do you recognize people when you can't see their face? We learned, when we used to wear masks during the pandemic, or some of us are still wearing them. We learned to try to identify people by their eyes, or Indians. We all look at how somebody's walking. We go, oh, that's so and so. Or we look at someone's belly, and if you can see their belt buckle, and if you can't see their belt buckle, they say, oh, that's so-and-so. Anyway, yesterday, I'll just give you a summary and talk about our topic of Wellness Wednesday. We try to bring positive, productive, and proactive thoughts and stories from Native Wellness Institute. Our mission is to keep the teachings of our ancestors alive. So anything that falls under the teachings of our ancestors, we keep alive. So yesterday, I'll put it in a summary. It was amazing because we had half our people dressed in costumes and half of our people just in their regular, it's not a costume. But that brings us to some of the topic about self-identity. Okay, so how do we identify? And I was thinking, because I have one of my brothers, Steve Barrios, that I grew up with, and Steve I think he just turned 70. He'll be 71. And I heard some young people speaking. They said it to me. They said, "You know why you're our badass auntie, and why Auntie Stephen, because that's what most people call him, is Auntie Stephen." They said, "Because you badass auntie and Auntie Stephen, you always look so nice. You always, your hair has done well. Your what you wear, And I was just thinking, here I have this comes from Sixi Kai on all of their T-shirts. This is a symbol for Natsitipi Blackfoot right here, and so they have shirts, and then I have a picture of they have a picture of ancestors, red crows on the back, and what else, So Auntie Stephen and I, these young people, were saying we want to grow up and dress like you guys. And I said, well, what does that mean? They go, yeah, I don't want to look drab. I just don't want to be wearing sweats or put my, that Indian bun that everybody just puts their hair up in an Indian bun. I mean, that's cool. But just think if their hair was braided, if they adorned, if they wear all of their elk teeth, if they, had their favorite amber, their favorite rocks, and they wore it. And then these are my new earrings from Mariah Albeda in Phoenix, Arizona. Now check these out. And they're made out of horsehair. I was like, woo, 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 woo. Too bad they didn't stand straight up. Anyway, just Mariah, I saw these, and she had a brand new baby. Just saw still breastfeeding, and she had her husband, and she dressed, her two sons were dressed as red wieners, red hot dogs. And so she had these earrings, and so, but whether it's Mariah, whether it's Bethany Yellowtail, whether it's Shailene Joseph, whether it's Native Diva Creations out of Alberta, or it's Good Day, my other niece, whoever it is. We're at a time when on Wellness Wednesday, one of the questions would like to ask is, can people tell your identity by what you wear? Or I had her get the Shoshone flag. Eastern Shoshone Reservation from 1863 to 1868. And this is the Shoshone flag. And what kinds of adornment and what kinds of flags do we use to show our self-identity? So, and then I just was given the Arapaho flag. One of our this reservation, it's large, and this reservation has a lot of. Curtis was just telling us about pictographs that tell many stories and can be deciphered. This reservation, Wind River Canyon, when you're coming through Wind River Canyon, a lot of medicines grow in that canyon, and a lot of the rock, you'll see a big sign that says from the Cambrian era, 500 billion years ago. You'll see another sign 600 billion years ago. You'll see another sign 200 billion years ago. So there's some old pieces of rock. And Nistu Amskapi Pikani, Nistu Sixakatipi Blackfoot Confederacy. So our oldest piece of rock, and we believe on this continent, is Ninastico, Chief Mountain. And so that is very symbolic. And so think about what's sacred in Wellness Wednesday. Why do we go to, they call it Devil's or Bear's Lodge Tower? why do we go to the Grand Canyon and go in down into the Havasupai area? Why do we at Susanville? We were just there, and they had a volcano in the 1500s, and there's lava rock, and there's all of these pictographs in certain areas. Why do we go to these sacred places? And us getting back to how do we adorn us so that we know we're not a fake ass Indian? No, I mean, like, I was thinking. And most of you know the story. We've shared it on the Power Hour many, many times. When we began in around 2000 to ally with the Maori, the Tamoko Maori. And then we began to ally with, this is the Aboriginal flag. I choose to wear this because I just got this in Vancouver in September, but this is the Aboriginal flag, but I choose to wear it because I call it my Joe Day. So I'll never forget the legacy and what Joe Day taught us. But this Aboriginal flag and these Tamoko, they don't call them tattoos, but this Aboriginal flag, I wear it because when I first began to visit Australia, I was in a room of academicians, and they were beautiful academicians because they were researching ancient stories and the chronology of when culture, language, and when culture started to disappear. And believe me, this is connected to judgment and who's an Indian and who's not an Indian, who's an indigenous and who's not an Aboriginal, who's a Maori and who's what do they call it, Pakia. I believe that correct me, that's their word for white people. Are many tribes. It's really good, when you're beginning to find your identity. Because if someone might, depending on how you look and what color your skin is, they might call you a white person, which is fighting words in some countries. In some country, when white supremacy, they're like, oh yeah, I'm white. Look how white I am. I'm so white, I'm right. Eh? But so it has to do with, so this flag, when we first went over, there was these great academicians, and I was there because of Bonnie Duran. Bonnie Duran asked me to go over because she wanted me to speak about the gathering of Native Americans and Gona and why Gona was so successful in our world for healing. So when I went there, I had not been to Australia, so I was, fresh off the res. We used to call them FORs, fresh off the res. I was fresh off America. I had gone to Canada a lot. I had gone to Mexico, but I had not gone to Australia. And so when I went to Australia, I got there before everyone else, so I was by myself, which is fine with me, But they're now saying that Indian women and women of color should never travel by themselves. But I was by myself, and so I went out, and it was interesting because we were in a very fancy smancy hotel. And then I asked how you get around, and they go, the water taxi. So the water taxi are actually these speedboats that can hold like 75, 100 people, and they take you along the water to where I had to get to the university. And so I went to the water taxi, and I got on. I didn't know till later that you're supposed to pay. Okay, and there's a point to this story. So I got on it. I went to the university, and I walked around the university campus, but no one would look at me. No one. It was like I was invisible. And I even looked in some classrooms, and I went around the university, and I found out later on that because I was in a country where and Joe Day, he used to always say this is black fellas and not be black fella friendly and places where black fellas wasn't friendly. And when we traveled with Joe Day, Native Wellness Institute, Jillian Joseph, um, Robert Johnston at the time, we had went and he was touring us around, and he asked us everywhere we go. He said, I want to ask you to. I'm going to tell you wherever we're at, if it's black fella friendly or if it's not black fella friendly, and that's what they call themselves, black fella. And in that term, and so he said, because if it's not black fella friendly, I want you to stick close to me. And we understood this later on because the racism in Australia is extreme. Extreme in that, if you're darker than this cup, it's pretty white. If you're darker than this cup, you's a black fella. And behind me is black. This is Eastern Shoshone's star quilt, and this is Marcus Red Thunder healing circle behind us. But then when we were over there, and I went there, I didn't know this information, so I was traveling around by myself, and I took the water taxi each day, and I was sitting next to a full-blood Aboriginal. And so then I asked him, I said, can you tell me what your flag represents? And because I am who I am, he said, if you were just a regular American, and that was interesting. He said, if you were a regular American, I would tell you, they would tell you that this red represents the red rock and the coral, the red rock of Australia, and that this black, they would tell you it represents something different, and then they would tell you that this yellow represents the sun. He said, my people, and at that time, and that's why I learned, about cultural appropriation. When people try to be fake like us or be us, are they culturally appropriate, and use our medicines or dress like an Indian, act like an Indian, or they go get a tan to be an Indian. So then I said, well, what does this really mean? And he said, for us, the Aboriginals of Australia, this red is the blood of our ancestors. It's the blood that they shed, and their blood went into the sand so you could live. And I go, wow, that's real different than what these other people are saying. He said, so this flag, and he said, and this black is for the black fella. The black fella, because they're the original people that lived for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. I don't know, we went to one part, it was like 600,000 years old. He said, the black fella, and then this time, it is the power of the sun, but it's a time when the outsiders came. So for them, we had Columbus, they had Cook. And Cook was a punk ass. He just came and murdered. He shackled them and murdered them to get their land. They just came and murdered, slaughtered, murdered. Kind of like the murder the other day with 18 dead and 13. He mass murdered the black fella. And so that was the blood that went into the sand and went there. And so that's important. I'm showing, because how do we adorn ourselves? How do we carry flags like this? that says we're Shoshone. And yesterday, there's another elder, pretty cool elder, just getting to know him. But he knew Curly Bear Wagner, and he's been around many moons. And he blessed me with a Blackfeet story, because not too far from here, and that's what this Gona is about. We're riding to the history, the historical that brings us to this moment. But he told me this incredible story of right near here. There's a mountain, and sometimes they call it Black Mountain, but he said that mountain is named When the Blackfeet Look Down. And I go, in my mind, I just said, oh, please tell me more, because I've never heard that story, and I would really like to hear that story. He said it was a time when the Blackfeet came from up north. Now, if you drive 14 hours straight north, is kind of where I live, at Babmont. Okay, so this was in the days when they're just, horseback. And they had come horseback, and they had looked over that mountain, and it was called where the Blackfeet looked down, and they watched it for a few days. They saw the lodges, the teepees, they saw the encampment, but there was no movement. So they stayed there because they were curious. They were like, what is going on, And Curly Bear Wagner, and he has a son named Joe Wagner. Hey, Joe, I hope you get to see this. This is one of your dad's stories. So we'll have to, and these stories, you have to check them out. But man, it was intriguing. So he said, what happened with the Blackfeet is they looked over the mountain and they saw this encampment, and they got to be curious. They're like, why is there no movement? So they got one of their toughest, biggest warriors, and they sent him down the mountain to look inside the lodges and see why there was no movement. Imagine. He climbed down into the encampment there, and when he got there, and he didn't know that everyone had died of smallpox. So they were all dead. That's why there was no movement. They all died there. And at that time, when camps, they would take stuff of value, because we both have really harsh winters. So they grabbed some of the blankets in that camp of Shoshones, and they took them back up to Blackfeet country and infected Blackfeet with smallpox. Sit with that for a moment. Just sit with that for a moment. We didn't, it's not, we were given, a lot of tribes were given blankets for genocidal purposes, infected with smallpox. But there's a story, and that's a story I want to learn more about, and, I'll go home and talk to my elders. But this Shoshone, he said, so we're connected with this elder over here. So when I leave here, we're in day 2 of the gathering of Native Americans. But I wanted to, one of the things, there is so much good happening of awareness. We now have the Killer of the Fire Moon has brought tremendous, beautiful awareness of a untold story of the Osage Nation. That is so fantastic. So now that all of America and all of the world are watching this story, they want to know more. So part of this power hour is, what story are you telling them? What story, what flag are you showing? How do you adorn yourself so that you respect your ancestors? First traveling to Maui, like I said, we've said the story over and over. I was invited there because Bonnie Duran sent me that time when I learned about this and the flag. And So the second time they wanted me to go before the Maori elders, and they're the ones with the cane. Okay, and I went with Kakuni Blasdale, who was 80 years old at that time, and Kakuni has since passed away. But I went with Kakuni, and we were to appear before these elders, and I knew better. Even though I was much younger than 30 years ago, I knew better that I better ask about protocol. So when you're going to someone's land, even if it's here in Wyoming or it's in Arizona or it's in Sacramento or it's in Nebraska, always ask about protocol, because following protocol is respect. But it's not it's much bigger than respect. It's a spiritual respect. So when we went there, and Kakuni, his study was on the songs and the chants. And so when I came, they wanted to know how we handled our health through Indian health service. They wanted to know how we had brought better health to our people. So, but we'll get back to this protocol. Oh my God! So I just kept grilling Deidre Nahula. I said, Deidre, please, and I'd say, I just don't want to come as an American. I'm not just an American. I'm coming as Natsitapi, and I'm Skapi Pikani, a Blackfoot Confederacy member. And that's, because I'm not these other tribes, but I'm coming, I want to follow protocol. So that's what she finally said, okay, they usually don't tell you this. So you're hearing it first here. When you go, she said, when you go before our, and matriarch and patriarch, because they were male and female with the canes, old grandmas and grandpas, and their heads of Marais. And Marais, some of those Marais, they could orally go back 50 generations and tell you 50 generations of who was their grandpa or their grandma. They can orally they can tell you everything. So I just said my prayers. I went and got a blessing from my elders. I think I went and got my face painted. I smoked my pipes. And, they don't let you bring feathers across. They don't let you bring like feathers there. Anyway, they have different laws. So I just had a little ceremony with my outfit, my Altooth outfit and my eagle fan and my feathers. And I asked them to be invisible. I said, please be invisible when we go through customs. Don't let anyone treat you bad and you could do this with your sacred things, your feathers. Wow, maybe, we'll just, so I asked so I went over there and I dressed like my ancestors. I wear my beadwork like my ancestors. And at that time, I started, because as a Rishis, all my grandmothers wore their hair like this. All my aunties wore their hair like this. And then when they were working, they would tie it in the back, so that and now I understand this, especially when it's 50-mile-an-hour winds. I understand why their hair looked like this and their braids, because it leaves you hands free. Your hands free. And so that was how I dressed. And when I got there, because she had said, when you appear before these elders, they want you to dress like your ancestors, not your oppressors. So think about that for a moment, to dress like your ancestors and not your oppressors. And so that that was like, wow, and then she said, because those that come here dressed in their fancy silk suits and their high heels or their fancy tie. And what is the tie for? It just points down to where they want you to look. Remember that. Billy said that. That tie just points where they really want you to look. And she said, they won't listen to you. They'll sit there and they'll go, mm-hmm. 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 But they won't listen to you because they know you're already colonized and you're brainwashed to think like them because you dress like them. So I was like, whoa! So that's what. And now that we're reclaiming our language, and now that reclaiming our treaties, and we're reclaiming our Indian stuff, everybody's wearing a ribbon skirt. Aurora Mamea and the Red Lightning singing group sewed all brand new ribbon skirts to go and collectively watch Killer of the Fire Moon. They all had brand new, and kind of celebrating Lily Gladstone. Lily, and they went and they actually said some prayers, and they sang a song before they watched the movie, and then they sang some songs and did some prayers after, and they processed it because it was a healing movie about in 1920 to 1926 on how Osage women were attempted genocide. Genocide, just like this story. Just like this story, and just like many of you. So I guess Native Wellness Institute, we're encouraging you to have gatherings. We just had the National Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives Gathering, a safe place. Gathering of safe places to tell our stories. So that's a beautiful thing that the Killer Moon gave us that gift. And that, Lily, Molly, her sisters, Anna, who carried Hale's baby and was murdered, intentionally poisoned. Those stories are in every tribe. So it's time for us to know the untold story, and I say process, to heal together so that we're better and that we're vibrant and that we're, resilience is kind of, I think on Blackfoot we call it Botsitsi Komatan. And Red Gun, you can correct me because sometimes my dialects is Botsitsi Komatan means miracle survivor. A lot of our elders, and I think it was around 2005, about in there, we had a Gona, and the federal government always uses these terms, and that's the only way they're going to fund you is use their terms. But we kept asking, well, how do you say resilient? Because we didn't have a word for resilient in our language. And maybe in your Navajo language, what's your word? In Arapaho, what's your word? In Shoshone, what's your word? So they had a meeting, and she was a last star, and she worked a lot in domestic violence. And there was 13 other elders there, and they had, so they came together, and they I don't know, a couple days, and they said the closest word, it's a word, and it's almost like that story that I told you about the Blackfeet going on a war party or a horse raiding party, is if our men were sent out, and sometimes there'll be a two-spirit woman like Pita Maka, Running Eagle, would go with them. And if everyone was killed and one walked back, they said, like in the Korean War, everybody would die, but a Blackfoot member would come back. And they called him Botsitsi Komatan. And the closest translation that they could muster was miracle survivor. Miracle survivor. And so think of that, like, you guys are all Botsitsi Komatan from the pandemic. If you're alive, alive, you're a miracle. We're all a miracle survivor. We're all a miracle anyway. We are all, what we have been through as Indian nations and as First Nations, we're a miracle. And some of us are crazy because, like, my relatives, shout out to Ira Provost at Abutsapikani and Brockett, eh? You know what? Him and his relatives, yesterday for Halloween, I opened the page and it says, "This is Buffy and Big Bird for that are for dressed up for Halloween." So one of the I so what she did was make a breastplate out of macaroni, like big macaroni. She had a big breastplate because I was thinking, yeah, Buffy always did have those necklaces. Those Indian. Does the Indian necklace make you Indian? Does the Indian necklace make you Italian? Does the Indian necklace make you a Dene? Does an Indian necklace make you, any other tribe? So anyway, she was dressed as Buffy, and then she got some kind of like a black wig and put the black wig over, and she didn't need a tan because she already had a tan. Anyway, she was dressed like she was Buffy, and then her husband was Big Bird. Anyway, I just laughed for a long time because it's a painful subject, but we're using humor to really look at who is an Indian and who is not an Indian. Wow. And even in 1934, Native Wellness Institute, we always say, look at your IRA, your constitution, because every nation gets to determine who their citizens are. And did you know on the other side, on if it's the medicine line, which is we call the border in Canada, they don't do blood quantum. That's how they control the lower 48 is blood quantum. They have status. I mean, there's another story there. And then I would highly recommend, there's a beautiful story on NPR right now about Samoans. And that's a cluster of islands between New Zealand and Guam. And it's territory of the United States. But when you're born there, you're not a United States citizen. You actually have to apply to be a citizen. And on those islands, in order to own land, you have to have 50% of your blood Samoan. And that was the same thing that they did to us in Canada. It was about 50% blood. Then it went to a quarter blood. And now we have, and then as an act of war, then they put us in boarding schools. So during times of being hormonally expressive, to go out and to make babies with outside of our ancestors and outside of our tribe. So you keep diluting the blood. And what that does is the treaties, the status is all based upon something that's going to disappear. So this Kakuni Blasdale that I spoke of, that I was with, Kakuni, I remember him saying by 1942, there'll be no pure Hawaiians that are 100% Hawaiian. And because they had calculated it. So think about this, I always, that resiliency, that Botsitsi Komatan. I always say, in a lot of our tribes, like up where we are, we noticed that for every elder that died of COVID, and because we couldn't go out, we had 8 or 9 babies that were enrolled members and increased our blood quantum. So this is like, some data. So get some funding for that. Only can be. We just want to fund. That would be interesting because there was all these other laws, like in Australia, the stolen generation. They actually went and stole the kids that had white blood in them and stole them with intentions of them mating with other whites, and ruling out any of this black fella blood. So that identity. So let's what's the goodness in this? What is the good identification? And I'm gonna head back to our group right now because we have some like 25-year-olds. We have and I guess about 80 years of wisdom. I don't know. I said, Curtis, you're looking pretty good. He looks pretty healthy. I don't care he's on a walker, but he looks, his mind is sharp and his mind is clear and he has the knowledge. And so we're going to go, because we're going to talk about, he was telling us a story of healing and a sorrow ceremony for the Shoshone people. And a lot of that ceremony, because we have sorrow medicine, white diamond willow, is where that's what we're talking about at the SCONA, the Gathering of Native Americans, as well as other medicine, because Curtis was telling us about the black smoke medicine. He said it's a medicine near the sage, and when the smoke comes up, that it's a very powerful medicine. So we're, elders are going to tell you a story. They just aren't going to tell you. They're not like an ATM. You just say, oh, what's this rite of passage? Oh, can I get an Indian name? Oh, what's this medicine do? Oh, can I sell it on Instagram? Oh. I don't know why that makes me laugh. It just makes me laugh because I don't want to cry about some of the selling of our culture. But sell it to other Indians. Indians selling to Indians. Indigenous selling to Indians. Right on. Right on. So this flipping it. So I actually wrote this. I had my sister write this out because one of the things that just happened here is we started to talk about carrying our flags and why we carry our flags. So I learned by going to Aotearoa, New Zealand, to carry your flag. They gave me a flag. I brought the Blackfoot Confederacy flag at that time, and then I got, I've been getting flags, and so I just got gifted, but it's over there. We're at the Boys and Girls Club. And if I never, when you're speaking, you should never read, but if you will please indulge me, this is the history of the Arapaho flag. The Arapaho flag was created in 1936 as a sign of respect and remembrance for the Arapaho War veterans. So remember, 1936. That's also the first year in America that there was a Native American with type 2 diabetes. Before that, there was none. No Indian had diabetes. Okay, the three colors used each have a different meaning and a symbolism on the Arapaho flag. The red is for the people, the black so that the people will be strong and unfearing of death. Strong and unfearing of death. And the white represents knowledge to be passed down to the young people. Imagine that. The 7 stripes each represent one of the 7 medicines of life. The white triangle signifies the way one begins with a prayer. He so no ho. He so no ho, their word, which means great spirit. That's the way I want it. The circle in the exact center of that triangle is black. And on the top, because that's where the heart is. The top of the circle is red, representing the human side, and for our happiness, strength, and sorrowful ways. The white line divides the 2 spears, representing the Great Spirit, so we will not forget who created us. The entire circle represents the world and the center of our lives. And the Arapaho people, they adopted this flag in 1956. So took them 20 years to have that incredible symbolism of who they were and what they represented. And so Wellness Wednesday, we're going to ask you to reflect and to start to dress and adorn and carry your flag and wear the representation wherever you go that shows who you are, who you really are. Your authentic self, if that makes sense, and it needs to make sense. I was just I was thinking again. A shout out to my younger sister, Lori Newbreast. This is the bottom of my ribbon skirt. Ooh, just pulled up my skirt. Anyway, look at Lori. This is Lori's interpretation of what sustains us. Eenie the buffalo. And she made this skirt right during the pandemic. Oh God, it just makes me. I think about before the vaccine. There was just so much hurt and fear, and I remember her making the skirt, and it had I wear it today. Because today is the day when we have a lot of tears and a sorrow to this gathering that I'm going to go back to, because people are healing, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. The tears are a good thing. But Lori made this ribbon skirt, and I wear it on days where I need extra resiliency, extra botsitsi komatan, and I need extra ancestors hugging me and holding me and walking me through the healing. So this is the adornment, and this is the representation. And so I guess to all the Buffy Saint Maries in the world, there is that sacred adoption. If we have adopted you, then you need to come and live with us and live like us. Not live in Hawaii getting a tan. Not live in the higher echelons while some of our people starve and don't have housing. Not live in prosperity when some mothers can't feed their children. Not live in the higher up and just associate with the higher up when some of our people are homeless. You hear me? A real Indian helps other Indians. So if you want to redeem yourself and you're a rich Indian, give out some of your money to help with this poverty level. Don't act good with your good money. We used to call that in the 1960s a poverty pimp. A poverty pimp was someone who went and got their education and got a large paycheck, or gets a large, whatever you get, and they forget where they came from. That's a poverty pimp. So to help us on Wellness Wednesday, think about, as we kind of wind down today, and we think about that Arapaho flag, that the colors represent the people. We don't have fear of death, and that we pass down knowledge. We pass down knowledge, and passing down knowledge means you can't be silent anymore. Tell what you know. It's like right now we have many who are they're telling us their creation story, and we have a beautiful person over there, Phil. He's from Navajo Nation, and I just love Phil because he's lived here for many, many years, and he's helped so many people find themselves and being clean and sober, but he still just maintains his Navajo-ness. I mean, because when I was coming here, I'd gotten a beautiful sticker in Phoenix, Arizona of a hogan, and the representation of a hogan. So many teachings of a hogan. So I gave him the sticker, and I just said, I always think of you because of how proud you are and how precious you are, and you still speak your language, and you still tell stories of growing up herding sheep, and you still, and when you herd sheep, he was telling me, you learn to listen to the wind, you learn to listen to the air, you sit on the ground and you learn to listen to the ground. And I was just saying, wow, Phil, that's so beautiful. You listen to the earth. You listen to the air. You listen to the sounds. And that's kind of, you know, I want to thank you. You know, it's this is every Wellness Wednesday we come to you every Wednesday just to give you some food for thought about self-care, food for thought about learning your Indian ways, and food for thought about when you raise your children, getting them Indian names, when you raise your children, having them learn the language, when you raise your children, teaching them to sit in ceremony, and when you raise your children, having them enjoy to eat buffalo meat, elk meat, salmon, kelp, seaweed. Ooh, I love seaweed. I love sushi. I love raw fish. I'm not. I guess I must need to eat some more because I'm kind of hungry. But I wanted to leave you with these thoughts. First, put out some tobacco, some pastascan. Put out some tobacco, and ask your ancestors for the experiences that you could learn their teachings of your ancestors. Put out that tobacco. Put it down and ask that you could learn of that plant or that song. Curtis just told us one of the ways the Shoshone, they used to catch a cricket and they wouldn't harm it. And they'd talk to that cricket and they'd ask it in their Shoshone language, can you please help me learn to sing or give me a song? And then you let that cricket go unharmed. And sure enough, you'd either dream a song or you'd catch a song and you could sing it, or you'd be gifted, you'd learn how to sing. He said that's how Shoshone, that's why we have a lot of good Shoshone singers. They, in the old days, they'd catch that cricket. And then that ceremony that Curtis shared with us, it was about getting rid of negative or sorrow, because we're learning about sorrow medicine. He said that ceremony is they would take that blanket and cover that person and sing songs over them and smudge them. And it was a long ceremony because when that blanket would lift all the negative out of them, all the sorrow. And he said, and it was the women who took that blanket, had to be life givers, and they would go and shake that blanket in the wind and let it go. So as we wind down, think of the things that you need to let go, that just don't carry them for today. Just let them go. Just let them flow on by and feel lighter. Oh yeah, we got a masseuse here. We're all getting a full body massage. I'm going to go sign up. I actually feel pretty good. But I'd like to ask prayers for, in all seriousness, what's happening in Israel, in Gaza, Ukraine. But what's happening on the 600 block in Browning, Montana. What's happening in the ghetto of our reservations. That the extra prayers go there and that our people get lifted up to wellness and being clean and sober. So with that, hayo nina, hayo napi natusi, hayo kita biwa, no gakimokit, no gaspomokit. We just ask that you send out those prayers, that everyone who is sitting in a circle in our ceremony, that they remember all the tribes, all the First Nations, that they remember the Aboriginal, and that they remember the Maori. And Ishtabatapi, we trust you. Gitzigakumen, we love you. We just ask for unconditional love between the connections of all of our nations. And with that, we'll see you next Wednesday. Kita kito, matsano.